The conference lineup includes Sipke Surstra as one of the speakers, senior full-stack software engineer specializing in .NET and cloud computing. His presentation is called Unlocking Hyperproductivity with Orchard, Elsa and Intelligent Agents. In this session, we will explore the integration of Orchard Core, Elsa workflows, and intelligent agents to revolutionize content management.
Thank you, Vicky. My name is Sipke. I'm a software engineer, and I am the creator of Elsa Workflows, which is an open source project. And my first question is to you is, who has heard of Elsa Workflows before? Raise your hands. Quite a few. That's good. For those who haven't heard of it, I will briefly explain what it is and what the origins are. So what is Elsa Workflows? It's an open source workflow engine framework, and it allows you to create custom applications that integrate with workflow engines, or actually becomes a workflow engine. It has its origins in Orchard Core, so there's it's basically a spin-off of the workflow module in Orchard, but it was taken out so that it could be reused in your own .NET application. It follows the modular design so that you can extend it with your own extensibility and integrate it into your own application through the concept of modules, which is inspired in Orchard Core modules, but it's not the same thing. It's not as fancy, where you can install NuGet packages and then it will install automatically. You still have to do it from programs, yes. So it's static in that manner. It also comes with a Blazor application which is called Elsa Studio, which is basically the designer, and it's in itself it's also modular. So it's similar to a dashboard application that you see with when you start Orchard, the Orchard admin. Excuse me. But also it's static. So you have modules that you can create in the Blazor application, and of course on the server side. And the entire point of this exercise was to allow workflow capabilities into your own .NET applications. Because not all projects use Orchard Core, sadly enough. So for those who aren't using Orchard Core and still need workflows, that's basically the main use case for Elsa Workflows. All right, so this talk is about, it's called hyperproductivity. So what does that mean in the context of Orchard? So imagine you are a content manager, and as a content manager, there's maybe a bunch of tasks that you are responsible for. So for example, you receive an article and you need to proofread it. You need to check for grammar errors, spelling errors, maybe some other typos, maybe the fluency of the content, etc. What about extracting keywords so that you can tag the content item, or maybe use it for social sharing? So keyword extraction is important. What about creating a bit of artwork to accompany your article? Maybe you have an audience that speak different languages, so you want to create some translations. And of course, social media is important to make people know about the content that is out there. So these are just a few examples of what you could do as a content manager. Now, this is a lot of work, and you're probably not going to do all of these things yourself, or if you do it, it's just a lot of work. So what you could do is hire a bunch of people. But people they're slow, they're expensive, they can get jet lagged, so it could be better. So let's optimize that. Let's explore some possibilities. And this is there's different ways you can go about that. I'm here showing a new module that is recently created as part of Elsa, and it's basically an integration with the semantic kernel, which is a Microsoft SDK to integrate with large language models. And this is perfect because you all know ChatGPT. You can ask it to do stuff, and it will well do its best to do that prompt that you send it. So here I'm gonna show a little. Hey, what happened here? Sorry, let me fix that. Oh, that's on. Anyway, so the agents module. What is it? It's a way for you to create a predefined set of prompts, and it allows you to. Let me see if it comes back. Oh, it's hidden. It's obscured here. That's not helpful. Oh, I see. I need to click. Sorry. So yeah, so they are predefined prompts to give a specific role or persona, if you will. So, for example, you could create a persona called proofreader. So it will be specialized into checking for those typos. An agent can have skills. So that means, like in ChatGPT, you can execute certain tools. Those were the plugins. And with the semantic kernel, you can teach your or tell your agent that it has a certain set of tools, so that allows it to integrate with your application code, which is extremely powerful because it allows you to do, access your database, for example, invoke APIs, or whatever the case may be in your scenario. And this agents module in the Elsa workflows offers deep workflow integration so that you can orchestrate the steps that need to be performed in your content publishing pipeline, if you will. So, that's one too fast. So I'm going to show this module how it works, and then we're going to take it to the next step and see how we can integrate it with Orchard, because that's where it really shines, this GPT's thing. All right, so here we have Orchard, and we have an instance of Elsa Workflows application. So the first thing I'm going to do is demonstrate proofreading, how that might work in a workflow. So let's say we have this workflow. So I just imported a pre-created workflow, and it consists of two steps. The first step is the proofreader, and this is it's an activity, but it's in the system because I defined an agent called proofreader. So here we have a full list of agents. And the nice thing is you can just create agents on the fly, create those prompts. So for example, the proofreader looks like this. So you give it a name, a description, which is metadata about the agent. And then the most important thing is the prompt template.
Can you zoom the screen?
Yes. I think,
No,
yeah.
but zoom in Chrome, not like Control Plus.
Oh. Like this?
And then unzoom the thing. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, so thank you. So this is the prompt template. This is the most important part of the agent because this tells the agent what role it should take on. And it's quite powerful because it also allows you to produce output in JSON format, which is very important when you automate these things. And more than that, if you have this prompt, you can use placeholders or variables like what you have in Liquid.
Is it liquid?
I don't know. It's used. This is the semantic kernel.
So it's liquid.
Yeah.
So it's fluid.
It's fluid because semantic kernel internally for its templating syntax uses fluid.
Correct.
That's beautiful.
Thank you.
So let me see, somewhere I'm using this thing. So here I am making a reference to some variable called content. This is arbitrary, but it's linked to an input definition here, which is not necessary for semantic kernel, but this is a way to if you go back to the workflow, and we select the activity proofreader, if you look at its input, this definition now appears here. So it's very flexible this way. All right, so here I created a bit of JavaScript. One guess which evaluator is used? Anyone?
Jing.
Jing. That's right. All right, so here I created I'm returning a small JSON object or a JavaScript object which gets converted to JSON. And this will be used by the agent, and I instructed the agent to translate each field, or actually to proofread each field, not to translate. So here we can see a typo, another typo, and more typos here. So when we execute this, it made a call to a semantic kernel, which calls into the configured LLM. In my case, this is OpenAI instance. And then it's done. And you see it took this as an input, and it was able to proofread and correct the faulty text. And it even capitalized the title, so it even knew that the title, semantically speaking, it understood this as a title. So it uses, I guess, American capitalization. Even though I didn't instruct to do it. That's interesting. All right, so this is like a stepping stone or a key pillar in optimizing or automating your content publishing pipeline. So let's take it one step further. So obviously we want to be able to create content using Orchard, and we want to have this assistance of these robots to proofread our content and fix it. So that's the purpose of this second workflow. Here we have a trigger called blog post published, and it's receiving webhook events from Orchard whenever a blog post gets published. Then what we're going to do is we're going to actually fetch the blog post content item, and then get out the markdown field or whatever field you have configured. We're going to invoke the proofreader again. Then we're going to update the blog post. And I created a small sequence diagram just to have an overview of what's happening here. It's very simple. In Orchard, an event occurs, which invokes a webhook definition. So it's an HTTP call into Elsa, which will trigger the workflow we just looked at. Which in that workflow will then get the blog post content item details, and then we use that to send a prompt or a call to the semantic kernel, where we have a prepared prompt based on the agent definition. And that's basically it. At the end, of course, we update the content item again using an API call. So let's publish this one. And I have a small bit of content here. All right, so I'm creating a new blog post with this one as the markdown body, and I'll enter a short title, and then we publish. So now it should have invoked the workflow, and we can see that the workflow instance has finished. So it was able to handle this event, fetch the content item, proofread the content item, and then fetch the published blog post here. And I did configure it to, I think, to publish as false. So that means we should now have an updated draft. This is true here. We have the draft. And indeed, we see that the typos that I may have not shown it to you. Let me show you, just in case you don't believe me. I pasted in a erroneous string here, but it was fixed.
You can't see the console.
Oh, I'm sorry. This one.
Yeah. Control plus.
Control plus.
Thank you.
Yeah. So, for example, jump is incorrect, and fastly is not proper English.
That's good to me.
To some people, it's okay. But yeah, so the agent thought differently about that, so it fixed it. All right, so that's cool. But what about taking it a step further? It's nice to have somebody help you proofread your text, but what about the artwork? And what about coming up with engaging titles? And what about subtitles? And even the tagging? We're not going to do that ourselves. We're just going to use an updated workflow, which is this one. So this one too starts with a trigger called blog post published. So I'm going to disable the other one. So that's good. And I will just briefly go over this workflow. I will zoom in a little bit. So here again, this workflow will be triggered whenever a blog post is published. Then we're going to read some information about it, like what's your title, what is your markdown body. So that's nested in this little container activity. We're going to fetch the content item. The get content item. That's going to extract all of the important information. Here it's just initializing. Well, just storing the content item in a workflow variable, which is convenient. In the subsequent steps, we can use that content item, and we're going to set the culture codes. And what that means, in the context of this workflow, we're going to initialize a variable into which language we want to translate the content item. So I hard-coded it here. Obviously, this could come from configuration or wherever. Good. So, okay, so here we're going to get the content item. It's going to do a little check, and by canonical content, I mean, is it written in English? Then we know, okay, this is the original or the canonical content item. And if that's the case, we're going to generate its title in case it's not set, and its subtitle in case it's not set. And when that's done, it's going to do the proofreading. It's going to update this workflow instance's name, which is just convenient. If you go to the workflow instances view here, you see there's a name column. It would be easy, convenient to set that one, so that's that little activity. And then we're going to branch into two paths. So this is a fork. I call it an implicit fork because we don't have an explicit fork activity. So it's going to generate the artwork, and it's going to generate tags. And this happens in parallel. So it's a concurrent job, basically. Or this is a job that executes concurrently to this one. And then finally, we'll patch the content item as we've seen in the previous workflow. And then once that's done, and that's of course a quick action, it's going to go ahead and iterate over the culture codes. And then for each culture code, it's going to generate a translation. And then internally, this is what it looks like. So it's going to invoke another agent called the translator. The name is incorrect. And then it's going to create or update the localized content item. So if it already existed, it will be patched. If it doesn't exist, it will create that content item. And then here it's going to update that content item. So let's see this in action. We're going to use the same string. I'm going to clean this one up. All right, and now I'm just going to paste in the string into the body, and I'll let the workflow figure out the title and everything else. All right, so we can see the title is blog post because I didn't specify one. And while we wait, let's see how the workflow is doing. So it's currently in the suspended state, so we can check out where it's currently at. So it's currently busy generating the artwork. It already generated the tags. So this is usually what takes the most time. So we'll give it a few seconds. And what I already mentioned, which is interesting, all these invocations to the semantic kernel and of course OpenAI, these calls can take some time, but they happen in the background. So that means the workflow is not executing at that moment. It's just suspended, stored in a database, out of memory. And once those jobs complete, they will resume the workflow. And this is a feature in Elsa that makes concurrent execution really easy to implement. You don't have to build background jobs yourself. You can just create custom activities, mark them to execute as a job, and they will execute as a job. So sometimes I've noticed that, and that's specific for this generate artwork, it could enter an infinite loop, and I still have to figure that one out. Let's see if that's the case. So you see it did generate the artwork multiple times and it's calling itself again. So if it's going to take a little bit more longer, I will kill it and then try again.
Can you actually read the screen?
I can, but I need to split it. Oh, sorry. I can't. I don't know how to solve this one.
Okay.
Well, let me click on the URL just to see what it came up with for the image. High resolution, it seems. So it generated an image of a fox and a dog. And yeah, so if this were able to complete successfully or without entering this infinite loop or whatever it's doing, it would then of course update the blog post. But it didn't, so we'll just, yeah, now it's eating all of my credit, so I'm gonna stop it. All right, we'll give it one more go because it's fun to see. So we're going back here, let's refresh. Yeah, so this wasn't updated. I published it again. Let's have a look at the other one. So I'm gonna delete this instance here. And let's see. All right, so this time it went through. So it completed the artwork generation, it updated content item, and it completed the translations. So let's go back to Orchard, refresh the page. And indeed, it created a title and the translations. So let's have a look at the draft. So it's using the media here, and we have our blog post without any errors. And of course, what's fun, we also have the translations. So we have Hungarian. I'm afraid to move away this widget, so it's, oh, let's see. Well, let's use this one. The French translation. And I don't know if it's correct, but is it correct?
It's not more correct than the English word that you showed me, like with fastly or whatever.
Okay.
Good, good.
So it's good enough. Good. Sebastian approves, that's always good. and of course Dutch, and that's my native language. All right, so this already should help a lot, but how about we take it one step further? So for that, we will go to Elsa workflows, and we'll use the Define workflow for this demo. And that's called Article Writer. So we are in Vegas. I don't have time to write articles. I want to be in the arcade. So
Yeah.
The arcade, yes.
Yeah, we'll say
Exactly.
that, sure. Okay.
So what we'll do here, we'll define a set of topics. We'll have it randomly select one of those topics. And we can, of course, prepend this with some cron trigger. So it will write a nice blog post once a week or whatever, using the copywriter agent. And this will write our content and then create a content item in Orchard. So let's see. So it selected a topic, Orchard Core, what are the odds? And it's currently busy writing the content, it's done, and it created the content item. And now this one is configured to publish the content item, which will trigger the other workflow, which means it will also create the translations. So let's have a look. Orchard Core, the baguette of CMS platforms. So what does it say? Mes amis, let me tell you about the magnifique thing called Orchard Core. Imagine, if you will. Sebastian is better at this. How was this? So it's basically explaining what Orchard Core is and how cool it is. And it has a lot of things to say. So it's like having your own vineyard, basically, and then you can cultivate it.
What does the last
All right. So we didn't see the image because I think this is a draft or the image may not have been updated. Let's look at the details here. Oh, there you go. Yeah, that's better.
So how do you upload the image?
So that's the next part of this talk. I still have 50 minutes, I think.
No, she will cut you in 5 minutes.
Okay.
Sorry.
That's all I need. So I will explain the next part. So that's more of the technical part. So for that we go to Writer. And what we have here, we have,
Can you read?
not yet, let me fix that. Okay. I hope this is better. Yeah, this one I'm not sure how to zoom
It's
in.
okay. It's okay. This one's okay.
Let's see. Okay, so I have the Orchard project here. So this is just a .NET Core project referencing the Orchard packages. So this is my Orchard instance, if you will. But I created a custom module called Orchard Experiments Webhooks and API. And this one is the key. So here I expose custom controllers in order to be able to make those REST API calls from the workflow to Orchard. So we have a bunch of them. So the media one exposes an upload controller, and this is the endpoint. So what it allows me to do is post media to some path, and this path I extracted, I think, from the content item, which exposes the media field, and actually this was broken when I upgraded from 1.8 to 2. The structure changed a little bit, so it broke my workflow. But that's okay, I fixed this. Yeah, and then here there's just the logic. So I'm reading from the request.form.files, getting just the one file, and then what am I doing here? Okay, here I have results.add. That's result. So that's just a list of objects. So I'm creating an anonymous object here containing information about the media. But the interesting part is the media file store API of Orchard. So here we can create a new file in the media store, and that's basically it. So now it's posted, uploaded into the media store. And what I return is back a array of the file names or some identifiers that is then used by workflow again to associate with the content item. So that's pretty cool. Similarly, for the tags, we haven't talked about the tags. Here, the tags are automatically extracted based on the content, and it makes calls to this tags API endpoint to create or update, or actually create in the case they don't exist, and of course associated with the content item again. And the same we could do for the category taxonomy, but I didn't do that. That might be part of the workshop. All right, so we went over the agents module, the integration with Elsa and Orchard. What else? Maybe some improvements. So here what we've seen is when content item was already published, then we started making improvements to it. But ideally, those improvements become part of the content item before it even gets published. Because if it's published, everyone can already read the content, but it would be not the finalized content item. So one improvement that could be made is having a user tasks feature, where instead of directly updating the content item, the system or the workflow could generate user tasks, so that a user could review a list of tasks with suggestions from the workflow, and then either approve, accept, or reject those enhancements. So that would be a nice improvement. Another one that could be even simpler is instead of having or in addition to having a publish button on the content item, is to have a little enhance button, which could be it would be a custom widget. And then when you click that one, it will invoke the workflow and then update the draft of the workflow. That would be another idea. That's all I have, but there's time in case you have questions. We could dig a little bit deeper into the code if you're interested in that. Otherwise, we're good.
Just a silly question. Are you using the OpenAI SDK, or are you using direct calls to the API?
I'm using, it's a good question, it's semantic kernel, so that's the Microsoft SDK, and it internally, it makes it easy to, well, it's configured to make calls to OpenAI, if that's how you configure it. It could also be configured to call into local models, or even your Azure OpenAI instances. And what the semantic kernel brings to the table is it will automatically invoke your tools, and actually that's something that I forgot to mention. So instead of you manually parsing the response and then figuring out what tools to use, the semantic kernel helps with that. And that's just one example of what it can do. It can do much more. It could even perform the entire planning. So for example, you could have an hierarchy of agents, and the semantic kernel will perform the planning together with the LLMs installed. And then it could figure out, so let's say you have a prompt that says, I want a content publishing pipeline which creates artwork, performs proofreading, does the translations, and that could be your prompt, and then you don't need the workflow, and it will then figure out the steps. So the semantic kernel helps you with that. However, if the process is repeatable as in this workflow, it would be a waste of resources, and also it would, most of the time it would be predictable, but maybe sometimes it would choose something else. So this combination of a workflow where you orchestrate the tasks, in my opinion, is ideal for these sort of scenarios.
And are you using specific model, AI model, or is it configurable where you can change?
Yeah, good question. So here, if we look at, this is the agents module, but there's also statics. And it starts with the secrets. Well, it's actually good that it doesn't show. Oh, this is the wrong module, this one here. So we have services. And this is a way to bind I think the 3 services that are provided, which is chat completion, which is basically ChatGPT, what you're used to in the web interface, and the ability to generate text from images, or the other way around, images from text. That's using DALL-E. And the third service, I believe, is the code interpreter. I'm not sure, but that's what I think. But here I create a link between those services and the model that I want to use. But this model ID that you see here is defined in the API keys. So this is recorded, but I will delete the API key. And this is pointing to my OpenAI portal, or the portal of OpenAI where I have my configuration, and that's linked to GPT-4o. And that this is another powerful thing of the semantic kernel. It's not limited to just GPT. It could also be connected to, I think, Gemini and others. And there's a bunch of those models.
LLMs being stochastic, can you be sure that it always generates valid JSON? Or do you need some edit guardrail around that?
So in most of the times, and in my experience, 100% of the times, it generates correct JSON, but apparently I learned that they did some internal testing, and it's not 100% reliable, but they recently released an update where it's 100% reliable. So they did a lot, and by they I mean OpenAI. They did a lot of work to ensure that it's always producing correct JSON. Yeah, and it's very important to be explicit in your prompt, where you explicitly say I want JSON, and you need to give it an example so that it's more reliable, and you need to go to the execution settings, where you can control things like the temperature, the top probability, those things, and check this one, use the JSON response. And this is key, otherwise it's really hard to automate these agents.
Will you be sharing the source for this demo?
Yes, so all of the things that I've shown is already on GitHub, and I will find a way to share the URLs to the GitHub repo of Elsa workflows, of course, Orchard, and the custom module that I showed a bit earlier.
Are the agents that you're showing, the personas, are those part of Elsa, or is that something you created as part of this demo?
So I created it as a preparation for this demo, but it's now also a module that you can just use. It's also part of the open source repo of Elsa.
My question is kind of related. I'm guessing you're using plugins in semantic kernel.
Well, thank you for reminding me. I wanted to talk about that.
Okay. Like you told me, I'll ask my question.
Let's answer questions. So the answer is yes?
Yes.
Okay, next question.
No.
You're going to ask the same question I'm going to ask.
I'm sorry.
I said Sebastian's probably going to ask the same question I was going to ask.
Okay, then I will just show it. So I have one example of this plugin, and it's so amazing. Let's see here. So this is an example of a plugin, it's just a class decorated with attributes to help the semantic kernel and the LMs figure out what tools or what skills it has at its disposal. So what we see here, I have an image generator plugin, which is described as generate an image from text, and it returns the URL to the generated image. And then I have a bunch of arguments to it. So I have a description that it will use internally to figure out what it needs to, what kind of image it needs to generate, some width and height values. And then here I'm invoking the kernel. So I'm getting a service called text-to-image service from the semantic kernel SDK, which is essentially DALL-E. And then I'm invoking that service to go ahead and generate the image. And then I return the image URL. So this is just one example of a plugin. the real power, I think, is not just this, but also if you have your own application and you need to access your database or invoke some APIs, and this allows the agent to do those things at its behest.
So it's extensible.
Yes.
Plugins.
Yeah.
It's all nice, but can you do it from VS Code? I don't know VS Code.
And what do we mean with it?
I don't know, but VS Code AI, I don't know all these questions about AI in VS Code. So.
Yes,
Does it
the
make
answer
sense?
is yes.
Yes, okay,
Yes.
I'm fine with that.
You said that you are fetching data through GraphQL. I would like to ask how you deal with dynamic data, like flows, widgets, and things like that.
Sure. Yeah. So let me show you. So let's say we have this one. Here I executed GraphQL, but this workflow knows intimately well what the structure is of the blog post item. So so it's hard coded, not in C# but in the workflow itself. So if you have some random content type in Orchard, you have to update your workflow or create at least a workflow that knows about that structure. So for example here, I shouldn't have done that. Here. Here I'm building a query, and I know, well here it's a dynamic query, right? Because I'm using the liquid syntax here to get the content item ID variable that I blocked out earlier. Then I know I want blog post types, and I want to extract or receive the display text in the markdown body, and that's it. So yeah, you have to know about the structure.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions?
Can you come back to the Orchard Core project because
There is a question.
just to contribute?
Yeah. Well, actually, we want to.
Who's we?
We want to leverage. Elsa is built so that it can be hosted in other applications, including .NET Core. The challenging part, or not technically challenged, but the most amount of work is the fact that this is like a SPA. It's a client, and it needs to make API calls. And although there's an endpoints module in Elsa that receives those API calls, we can't just take it as is into Orchard because there's some challenges like authentication and authorization and those kind of things. Nothing really blocking, but it probably means we should just copy and paste those things into Orchard controllers or minimal APIs or whatever is being used there. So it's a bit of work. Other than that, it will be a great add-on. And I did start a Orchard Core module project on GitHub. I haven't finished it yet.
There was one more question.
What does that module do?
The one I just mentioned?
Yeah, the Orchard Core one.
Oh yeah, so it basically brings in the Elsa engine as a proper Orchard module into Orchard. So when you enable its feature, so it's called something like Elsa Workflows feature or whatever, then it installs the services, all of those things. And that also means then you can use the Elsa designer, so it has a controller which serves a page, which hosts the designer, and then you can start creating workflows and it will store it in the system. So yeah.
I was thinking there could be a feature in Orchard to support semantic kernel, and then you could have extension points so that other modules and features could contribute plugins.
Yeah.
And you could have something like in the admin panel, just a prompt to say like, create a blog post about this, and
Yes.
then because the content module would have the plugins, it could just go off and do it.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is also what I'm thinking of doing for this Blazor application as like a co-pilot, but also deep integration everywhere.
Orchard
Yeah.
Copilot.
There you go.
But then you would not need Elsa, and that's not the point.
Yeah, that's true. The point is, you have to use Elsa. No, it's a very it's like Orchard for workflows on steroids. It's really well evolved, and I would love for it to be hosted in Orchard. But there will be some challenges. Like for example, this agents module has its own UI, which doesn't automatically carry over maybe in Orchard because it has its own menu system, for example. But it's interesting.
Why? No, I can't ask a question. I ask later.
But can you generate old music and then replace the Smithsonian website to?
I don't know about replacing the website, but there is of course audio generation, text to audio.
Generate music. We don't need musicians.
We don't want no stinking AI music.
You don't need programmers either.
Okay, then we won't go there. All right, looks like that's it.
Pointing.
Yeah, okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.